Hey, it's Dave here and welcome to another video on irritable bowel syndrome. In this video, we're just going to talk about the main lab tests that you can have done to identify why you might have irritable bowel syndrome. And these are the three main tests that we typically use in our practice. And we don't use all of the tests for everyone. Sometimes one test is perfectly adequate. Sometimes people might even need or maybe even want to do, I'm just going to start again. Lost it, Wheezy, lost it. Hey, it's Dave here and welcome to another video on irritable bowel syndrome. In this video, we are going to talk about the three main tests that you can use to identify whether your irritable bowel syndrome is being caused by problems with the microbiome, imbalances in the microbiome in the digestive system. So we're going to leave food and food intolerances and food sensitivities out of this video for the time being. We're just going to talk about the bugs, if you like. So as we know from previous videos, about 60 to 80% of people who have irritable bowel syndrome seem to have this condition called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO. And you can only really identify SIBO accurately using something called the SIBO breath test. And what happens in this test is that you provide a baseline breath sample, and then you drink a sugar solution, and then every 20 minutes you provide further breath samples, and the lab analyzes all those breath samples for different gases, particularly hydrogen and methane. And if the hydrogen and methane levels increase too soon across time after you've drunk the sugar solution, it's a very strong indicator that you have some form of SIBO. So that breath test can be really helpful. The problem with the breath test is that it only tests for SIBO. And so if you have SIBO and that's the main cause of the irritable bowel syndrome, that's great because you're going to identify that using this test. But what if you also have H pylori? What if you have fungal overgrowth with candida? What if you have parasites? What if you have low levels of your digestive secretions like stomach acid and enzymes and bile and all of those different things? This test is not going to pick those factors up, and so you don't get as much information as perhaps you need. So for me, the best starting point is to actually use a stool test. And the stool test really needs to be one of the tests that they analyze the microbiome's DNA, not a standard traditional or conventional stool test, which only looks for a handful of pathogenic parasites and bacteria. And the reason we use the DNA or prefer the DNA stool test is that it's able to give you an idea of what's going on with the microbiome as a whole. And it's able to identify lots of different pathogenic bacteria. It's able to identify yeast and fungal overgrowth. It's able to find parasites. They're the microscopic parasites, and also worms and things like that as well, which we do see now and again. And it's also able to tell you about the balance of the friendly bugs, the friendly bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacter, and whether they may be deficient or overgrowing. And it's able to find the presence or excessive overgrowth of some of the opportunistic bacteria that are involved in SIBO. So these are things like Enterococcus, Bacillus, Citrobacter, Klebsiella, Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, and things like that. So if you do a stool test first and you find a bunch of those opportunistic bacteria, there's a really high chance that you have SIBO. You can't confirm it from the stool test, but there's a really high chance that those patterns on the stool test show SIBO. So then you can run a breath test to confirm that. But what you're doing with the stool test is you're also looking at everything else. You're looking at H pylori, all the pathogenic bacteria, the parasites, the fungal overgrowth, and all of that stuff. And so it's a much broader range of information that you get from running the stool test. And both of these tests can be done at home. You don't have to go anywhere to do those tests. You can do them in the comfort of your own home. The third test, which you can also do at home, is something called organic acids. I've mentioned this in some of the other videos, but the organic acids that come out in your urine can be chemical footprints of microbial activity in the digestive system. So you can have yeast and fungal overgrowth, and there are certain substances that go higher in your urine which indicate things like bacterial overgrowth, yeast and fungal overgrowth, and also mold overgrowth as well. So that can be a very helpful addition to the arsenal of testing that you do. My preference, if I'm honest, is initially to run the stool test as the first one, SIBO breath test if needed as the second priority, and then the organic acids test if we think that's necessary as well. So they're the main tests that give us an idea about whether the microbiome is contributing to irritable bowel syndrome, whether there are excessive amounts of bad bugs or deficient amounts of good bugs, or a combination of both. Now, there's a caveat to all of this, which is if you do happen to have SIBO, you do happen to have parasites or fungal overgrowth or whatever the pattern is in your individual case, why has that happened? Is there something deeper going on in your body that's predisposing you to having these issues with your microbiome? So do you have inadequate thyroid function, which slows the digestive system down and allows bad bugs to overgrow? Do you have stress and changes in your adrenal hormones or your sex reproductive hormones? Because the research indicates that changes in those hormonal levels can also predispose you to some of these issues as well. Do you have nutritional deficiencies that are weakening your immune system, that are slowing down your digestive system as well? Things like magnesium deficiency, for example. So sometimes you might need to do a little bit of deeper investigation to figure out why all of this is happening, right? And the reason you need to do that is that if you work on getting rid of all the bad bugs and balancing your digestive system, you might feel really good, but then if you don't address the deeper underlying factors, then these problems might just come back again in a matter of weeks or possibly months. Or if you have a stressful episode in your life, boom, you're right back to square one again. So it's really important, if you want to get totally robust and minimize your chances of relapsing into irritable bowel syndrome, that you do the whole thing over a period of time to make sure that you hit everything. And it's a very individual process. Some people find that they have SIBO, they get rid of it within 30 days, and they go on and live happily ever after. With other people, it might take a matter of 3 months, possibly 6 months, and in some cases longer, to actually get their body back to where it needs to be so that they're nice and robust and healthy. I don't know what the situation is for you as an individual. That's why I recommend that you book an initial consultation, talk to us, let's figure out what's going on and figure out which of these tests is going to be most relevant to you based on your health history and your symptoms. So I hope this has been helpful. In the next video, we're actually going to talk about the indirect tests, these deeper tests, in fact, that you can use to figure out clues about why some of these more superficial issues with the microbiome might be happening. And then we're also going to talk about how you can test your food sensitivities as well to see if they're contributing to the problem. And I look forward to presenting those videos to you very soon, and I'll catch you later.